Welcome back to the Quantumania rewrite. It's time for part 3. I recommend you watch the previous parts to make sure you're all caught up. But hey, maybe you're busy and you don't have time to watch parts 1 and 2. So, just in case, I'll do a quick recap for you. If you don't need the recap, skip to this time in the video. So, Scott and Hope stop Whirlwind, and Cassie calls them, saying that she wants to show them something. Cassie brings Scott, Hope, Hank, and Janet to the basement, where she shows them her superhero costume and her quantum beacon. But because Cassie sewed the pin particles into her costume by hand, some of the particles were absorbed into her skin, giving her the power to grow and shrink without needing a suit. Scott, Hope, and Cassie fall into the quantum realm and are taken to Kang, who promises that he can give Scott all the time he missed with Cassie as long as he gets a certain device. Scott accepts, and he and Hope go into a probability storm in order to collect Kang's portal generator, not knowing what it is. Upon getting the portal generator, Kang turns on our heroes and tells MODOK to kill them, but just in time, Hank and Janet show up. Scott, Hope, and Cassie follow Kang through his portal, while Hank and Janet face off against MODOK. We got all that? Good. Now, let's get started with part 3. Scott lands on the other side of the portal. He gets up and sees Kang standing adjacent to Hope and Cassie. Kang backs up and creates 3 more portals with the portal generator. Kang enters the middle portal, and from each one, a different Kang exits. The first Kang is wearing bright red armor on a red cloak. This is the Scarlet Centurion. The second Kang is wearing blue armor with violet gauntlets, known as Victor X. The final Kang isn't some fancy variant, he's just a Kang with a floating chair that has a force field on it. You know, basic Kang stuff. Scarlet Centurion turns to Victor X.
What do? We are obligated to help any Kangs in need,
Victor X responds,
no matter how much distaste we have for them.
The 3 Kangs ready their weapons. Scarlet Centurion takes out 2 energy swords. Victor X loads his energy blaster, and the chair Kang charges up his force field. This doesn't look good, Scott comments. We have to go into the middle portal, Hope says. Alright, Scott says. Hope, you take on the blue guy, Blaster to Stinger. Cassie, you grow giant, and I don't know how to grow, Cassie interjects. You just did it a second ago, Scott rebuts. But I don't know how it happened, and I definitely don't know how to control it. Scott sighs. This is why I prefer suits. He turns to Cassie. Alright, Cassie, stay behind Hope and me at all times. Stay safe. We'll try and deal with these Kangs. What plan did you have in mind? Hope asks. We'll use Hank's old favorite, Scott replies. Cut to Hank and Janet fighting MODOK. Really, Henry? Janet berates as she dodges MODOK's lasers. The hit it until it's knocked out plan? Hank punches MODOK and turns to Janet.
It worked back in the war.
This isn't the 60s anymore, Henry, Janet shouts. MODOK tries to shoot Hank with a laser, but he shrinks to avoid it.
Fine, he says. We'll use one of Scott's plans.
Janet shoots MODOK with her sting blast to distract him as Hank sneaks behind and shrinks through MODOK's floating chair. Hank, from within MODOK's suit, starts pulling out wires at random. MODOK screams as his chair begins to malfunction.
Get out! Get out! This can't happen again!
Hank pulls out a large wire in MODOK's suit, and the chair immediately loses all of its power and falls to the ground, its weapons deactivated. We have to go after Scott, Hope, and Cassie, Janet says.
Do you have another one of those portal generators?
Hank asks. No, but I know how they work. Janet and Hank step over to the computer monitor as Janet begins to code another portal generator. I helped Kang rebuild his from scratch, Janet says. I can do it again. A little help? MODOK calls from the floor. Without looking, Janet shoots MODOK with a sting blast, causing him to spin on the floor in circles.
This is not helping!
We then cut back to Scott and Hope fighting the 3 Kangs. Hope is taking on Scarlet Centurion, who's blocking her sting blast with his energy swords. Scott is trying to break through Chair Kang's force field while also avoiding Victor X's energy blasts. Cassie is watching from the corner, and she realizes that, while Scott and Hope have the 3 Kangs distracted, the portals are unguarded. Cassie takes her chance and sprints for the middle portal. Cassie! Scott cries, but it's too late. Cassie jumps through the portal and disappears. Scott is then hit in the back by an energy beam and falls to the ground. Out of desperation, Scott throws a shrinking disc at Victor X. He deflects it, but it hits Chair Kang's force field, shrinking the throne and leaving that Kang weaponless. Previously, Chair Kang then jumps back through his portal, which closes behind him.
Coward!
Victor X yells. Scott punches Victor X in the face. Enraged, Victor X throws down his blaster and raises his fists, engaging Scott in a brawl. Hope, still fighting Scarlet Centurion, decides to return to normal size and hit him with bigger sting blasts, but he's still able to block all of her attacks. Cut back to Hank and Janet working on the new portal generator. Hank turns to Janet and asks,
Why didn't you ever tell me about all this stuff in the quantum realm?
Without looking away from the new portal generator, Janet replies, I wasn't ready to talk about it, Henry.
But the scientific implications of what you found can revolutionize—
Yes, because that's what you care about! Janet yells, slamming her fist onto the table. It's always about the science with you, but you never once stop to question how someone feels! Hank is silent, and Janet continues.
I did horrible things down here. I helped Kang rise to power. I fixed his technology, and I almost unleashed him onto the multiverse. But whenever you asked me about the quantum realm, it was always his scientist Dr. Henry Pym, and not Hank, my husband.
Silence falls upon the room again, only to be broken by MODOK. Should I leave for this, or—
Shut up!
Hank and Janet yell at the same time. Hank turns to his wife. I'm sorry, Janet. You know I've never had good people skills. I just wish I could have done better for you and Hope. Janet puts her hand around Hank.
Well, you can still do better now.
Hank nods.
So, are you okay?
Janet laughs. Yes, Hank, I'm fine now. She presses a button on the new portal generator and it lights up. Yes, it works! She turns to Hank. Let's go help our family. Can I come with you guys? MODOK asks. Hank turns around and faces MODOK.
If you talk one more time, I'm going to grow your ribcage to the size of a hot dog stand.
MODOK immediately shuts up, and Janet activates the portal. Back at where Scott and Hope are fighting Victor X and Scarlet Centurion, a portal opens, and Hank and Janet come through. Scott spots Hank and Janet and yells, Guys, Cassie went through the second portal. Go after her and make sure she's okay. Hank shakes his head.
The four of us can go after Cassie together.
Janet looks at Hank and smiles. The two of them then split up, with Hank going over to help Scott fight Victor X, while Janet assists Hope with Scarlet Centurion. This is where we get to see both generations of Ant-Man and Wasp fighting together. One of the most requested things I've seen for the Ant-Man characters is to see a series about Hank and Janet back in their prime. So this and the MODOK fight are my way of giving that group a little something for their efforts. Hank and Scott team up against Victor X, attacking him from in front and behind. Scott manages to pin Victor X to the ground. Victor X reaches for his energy blaster, but Hank kicks it away. Scott shrinks and punches Victor X into the air with super strength, and Hank grows and slams Victor X into the ground. Victor X is knocked out. We then cut to Hope and Janet taking on Scarlet Centurion. Janet is flying around him, blasting him with a smaller sting blast, while Hope hits him with normal-sized sting blasts up front. Scarlet Centurion manages to hit Janet in the air, sending her flying into the wall, where she returns to normal size. Scarlet Centurion raises his blades to kill Hope, when Janet throws Shrinking Disc at the energy blades. Caught off guard by his blades shrinking, Hope was able to hit Scarlet Centurion point blank with a fully charged sting blast, knocking him to the ground. Hope runs over to Janet. Mom, are you okay? She asks. I'm fine, Janet replies. I'm just not used to being in the Wasp suit after so long. She looks at Hope and smiles. I prefer when you're the one in it. Hope smiles back. Hope and Janet hear a loud crash and turn around. Scott and Hank have just incapacitated Victor X. The two of them walk over to Hope and Janet. We have to go after Cassie, Scott says immediately. Hold on, Hope says. I want to test something. She grabs Scarlet Centurion by the scruff of his shirt and throws him into the leftmost portal, which closes behind him. When Cassie entered the middle portal, it didn't close, Hope notes. But when both of these Kangs went through, their portals immediately closed behind them. I think the portals will remain open until their respective Kang goes through them again. We don't want anyone from this universe finding us, Janet says. So we should bring the blue one with us, if only to close the portal. Scott and Hank pick up Victor X, and they, plus Hope and Janet, make their way through the last remaining portal. Cut to Cassie appearing on the other side of the portal. She hears Kang speaking and quietly walks over to investigate. She turns a corner and sees Kang talking to a boy about her age.
You must listen to me, Kang,
Kang says to the boy. Stop calling me that, the boy interjects. I'm not Kang. My name is Nathaniel.
I too was Nathaniel once,
Kang says.
But then I seized my destiny and became much more, and I'm trying to help you do the same.
Kang then spots Cassie out of the corner of his eye.
Kang, do you remember those people I was talking about earlier?
He turns and faces Cassie.
She's one of them. Reach for your destiny. Kill her.
Cassie takes a step back, preparing to run for it. Nathaniel then turns to Kang. Why?
What did you say?
Kang asks. Why should I kill her? Nathaniel repeats. Kang sighs.
Because Kangs help Kangs, whether they like it or not.
Nathaniel glares at Kang. Well, I'm not a Kang, so you should get going. Kang shakes his head.
I'm disappointed in you. You could have been the strongest of us all, Nathaniel.
Kang opens a portal and disappears through it. After Kang leaves, Nathaniel turns back to Cassie. There's a quick moment of awkward silence before Cassie says, thanks for, not killing me. Yeah, no problem, Nathaniel replies. I'm not gonna kill someone just because my future self told me to. Okay, well, I'm Cassie. I know, Nathaniel says. After a quick second, Nathaniel hastily adds, not in a weird way. I mean, it's not like I was watching you or anything. Kang just told me to expect a Cassie Lang. I was also told there'd be a Scott Lang and a Hope Van Dyne. Where are they? They're still fighting other Kangs. I wasn't really doing anything, so I snuck through the portal to try and find Kang. Which, now that I think about it, probably wasn't the best move, considering I can't control my powers.
What powers? Nathaniel asks.
Oh, I can grow and shrink like my dad and stepmom, but I don't need a suit to do it. The problem is, I don't know how to activate it. It just happens.
Well, when have your powers activated before? Nathaniel asks.
The first time was when I saw some weird giant bear thing, and I shrank. And then, when Kang was insulting my dad, I grew.
Nathaniel thinks to himself for a second. It sounds to me like your powers are tied to your emotions, he says. Fear causes you to shrink, and anger makes you grow.
You know, I think you're right, Cassie says. But I can't help my dad as a superhero if my emotions activate my powers.
Well, I could teach you how to control your powers, Nathaniel offers.
Can you even do that? Cassie asks.
Nathaniel smirks. I'm from the 40th century. Technology for me is like magic to you. I knew how to control every part of the human mind by the time I was 10.
Cassie suddenly hears Scott, Hope, Hank, and Janet coming through the portal. Scott is shouting Cassie's name. Oh god, Cassie whispers. My dad's gonna freak out when he sees you.
Why? Nathaniel asks. It's not like we're dating or anything.
Cassie's face immediately goes red. No, it's not like that. It's just that you're a Kang and we're... Nathaniel looks away dejectedly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult you. It's just that, well, I'm a Lang and you're a Kang.
Technically, I'm a Richards, Nathaniel corrects. Kang is my future self's title.
As Scott's voice gets closer, Cassie tells Nathaniel to step back. Let me try and explain a bit first, then you can come out. Cassie enters the room and is immediately spotted by Scott. Cassie! He cries, and he rushes to hug her. What were you thinking going through that portal? You could have ended up in space or surrounded by giant monsters! I'm sorry, Dad, Cassie says. I just didn't want Kang to get away. Speaking of, where is Kang? Janet asks. He already left, Cassie replies. Wait, you saw Kang? Scott says. Did he see you? Cassie nods.
Not that I'm not grateful,
Hank says.
but how are you not dead?
Well, Kang wanted to kill me, but someone else stopped him. He saved my life.
Who? Scott asks. That's when Nathaniel walks into the hallway. Hank immediately trains Victor X's energy blaster on Nathaniel.
That's a Kang, isn't it?
Wait, don't shoot! Cassie shouts, stepping in front of Nathaniel. Nathaniel is a good Kang!
Janet readies her sting blasts. There are no good Kangs.
No, you just haven't gotten to know him yet, Cassie says.
Have you? Hope asks. Cassie, Nathaniel says. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I should talk for myself. I don't want you getting in trouble on my behalf. Nathaniel steps up and stares down Scott, Hope, Hank, and Janet. It's true that I am a younger version of Kang, but that doesn't mean I'm destined to be a conqueror. I'm fighting my destiny. You don't have to trust me, but there's something you should know before you go. Only I know where the Kang you're looking for went. Without me, you'll be searching universes for decades before finding the one he's in, and by then, it'll be too late. Nathaniel continues. Also, you'll need all the help you can get against a Kang as powerful as this one, and that includes Cassie mastering her powers, and only I can get her there. I can teach Cassie just fine, Scott says.
I taught Scott, I can teach Cassie,
Hank says. No, you can't, Nathaniel rebuts, because Cassie's powers are dictated by her emotions, something both of you are notoriously bad at controlling. Scott's lack of control is actually what gets him killed by Jack of Hearts. The room goes silent. I die? Scott breathes. In one timeline, Nathaniel confirms, and Cassie is killed soon after in the Children's Crusade. Cassie looks at Nathaniel, horrified, and Nathaniel sullenly nods. Was that a threat? Scott asks warily. A promise, Nathaniel says. I can ensure that timeline doesn't come to pass, but you'll need to take me with you. Scott thinks to himself. After a few seconds, he says, I still don't trust you.
Dad, Cassie says, I was here, alone, in front of Kang and Nathaniel. If Nathaniel really was evil, he had the opportunity to kill me already. No one would have stopped him. The fact that he didn't means you can trust him.
Scott finally concedes. Okay, you saved my daughter's life. You can come with us. Thank you, Nathaniel says. Now I'm gonna get changed. Wait, like, right here? Scott asks. Nathaniel laughs. Not that kind of getting changed. Watch. Nathaniel closes his eyes and a gray and red Iron Man suit surrounds him. He dons the suit and says, I modeled the armor after Iron Man, because I want to be a hero like Tony Stark was. Scott scoffs. Okay, Iron Lad. This character is the reason I rewrote Quantumania, why I've written this 66-page script, why I've dedicated months of my life to this video series, and why I've driven myself insane doing a butt ton of research on different Kang variants, the Ant-Man family, etc. How is Iron Lad not in this movie? Literally every part of this movie screams Iron Lad. Iron Lad, aka Nathaniel Richards, is a younger variant of Kang. And guess who the main villain of the movie is? Kang! Iron Lad and Cassie Lang were an item in the comics. And would you look at that? Cassie Lang is also introduced as a hero in this movie. The MCU is building up to the Young Avengers. Well, guess who started the Young Avengers in the comics? Iron freaking Lad. This movie even involves the Quantum Realm, which, as seen in Endgame, can cross through different timelines, so there is no excuse for Iron Lad not appearing in this film! Whew, that felt good. I really need to get that off my chest. Anyways, Nathaniel walks over to Janet and checks out the portal generator she made. Not bad, it'll do his job well. Nathaniel types in the multiversal coordinates, then creates the portal. He hands the portal generator back to Janet. Go in last, he tells her. The portal will close behind you. Janet nods. Nathaniel walks toward the portal, but Scott stops him. How do we know you're not going to ambush us once you're on the other side? Nathaniel steps back. You're welcome to go first. Scott shakes his head. We'll go through together. Nathaniel looks at Cassie and shrugs, and Cassie giggles. Scott and Nathaniel jump through the portal, followed by Cassie, Hope, Hank, and Janet. The group exits the portal and lands in what appears to be New York City. What's Kang doing in New York? Scott asks. This isn't your New York, Nathaniel replies. It's one of an alternate universe. Also, Kang isn't here. What? Scott says. Then why'd you bring us here? There's one more piece of technology I need to fully complete my armor, Nathaniel says, and I can only get it in this universe. You could have told us, Scott begins, but he's cut off when a figure flies above and lands in front of them.
Iron Man?
Scott breathes.
You're alive?
Yeah, Iron Man says. He takes off his helmet to reveal Scott Lang. I can only get the piece I need from this universe because this is the only universe where Scott Lang is Iron Man, Nathaniel explains. Also, this could be a good place to train Cassie. Hank takes off his helmet.
Scott? You're Iron Man?
Hank? Iron Man Scott says. He blasts Hank with a repulsor beam, and Hank falls to the floor. Janet immediately readies for sting blasts.
Why did you do that?
She demands. It's because of him that we're in this mess! Iron Man Scott shouts, pointing to Hank.
What mess? Hope asks.
Ultron! Iron Man Scott replies. Hank created Ultron, and he's turned the world into a dictatorship!
That's wrong.
Hank says as he gets back up.
Tony Stark created Ultron.
Tony Stark tried to stop you from making Ultron, Iron Man Scott rebuts. But of course, the great Hank Pym knew better.
Oh yeah? Where's this world's Tony Stark?
Hank says.
I want to give him a piece of my mind, and maybe a piece of my fist while I'm at it.
Iron Man Scott hangs his head. Tony is dead, he says. He was killed by Ultron. After his death, I was entrusted with the Iron Man armor to avenge him. Everyone is silent. Our Scott then turns to Nathaniel. Why in the world did you think an Earth ruled by Ultron would be a good place to train Cassie? Well, as long as you don't piss off Ultron, it's a great place to train, Nathaniel replies. Iron Man Scott scoffs. Yeah, there is no way you guys aren't pissing off Ultron. He gestures to Nathaniel. He looks like Iron Man. He points to our Scott. You look like me. He glares at Hank. And you're, well, you. You're all wanted by Ultron. Our Scott glares at Nathaniel. Alright, Nathaniel says. We won't train Cassie here, but I still need a piece of Stark tech before we go. And what makes you think I'm gonna give you this piece of Stark tech? Iron Man Scott asks. Nathaniel takes out a small vial filled with an oozing gray substance. Because I'm willing to trade for it. Iron Man Scott gasps. Is that what I think it is? Nathaniel nods. Wait, what is it? R. Scott asks. You don't want to know, Nathaniel replies. He then turns back to Iron Man Scott. It goes by Exelon, and it's only a small portion, but more than what you need. And I'll give it to you in exchange for a certain piece of technology. What do you want? Iron Man Scott asks. Nathaniel points to Iron Man Scott's chest. I want the purple energy core inside your arc reactor. Without hesitation, Iron Man Scott opens up his arc reactor and takes out a small purple chip. He hands it to Nathaniel, and Nathaniel gives him the piece of Exelon. Iron Man Scott takes a step back and puts his helmet back on. Reed, I think I have a way to beat Ultron. Meet me in New Adelan. He flies into the air and disappears. That might have been the most fanfiction-y sentence I have ever said in my entire life, but we're gonna go with it. Nathaniel inputs the purple chip into his armor, and his energy accents turn from blue to orange. Alright, let's go, he says. That's it? Scott asks. We came here to get some little chip? It's more powerful than you realize, Nathaniel says while programming new multiversal coordinates into the portal generator, and it's a piece of technology that Kang doesn't have. He opens a new portal, and everyone hops through. The portal takes the group to an oasis tucked away inside a massive desert. This Earth will be a good place for Cassie to train, but we have to work fast. We don't have much time to stop Kang. Let me guess, Scott says. This world is ruled by Thanos. Actually, there are no sapient beings on this planet, Nathaniel replies. It's practically uninhabited. He then turns to Cassie. You ready to get to work? Cassie nods. Nathaniel grabs Cassie's hand and leads her into the forested area of the oasis. Scott starts to follow them, but Hope stops him. Let me watch them, she suggests. They won't get any work done with you hovering over them. I wouldn't hover, Scott says. Scott, I'm the one with wings, and you'd be hovering more than I ever could, Hope rebuts. Scott sighs. Fine. Hope heads off after Nathaniel and Cassie. Hank walks over to Scott and says,
You know, I've seen that look in Cassie's eyes before with Hope. I think she has a crush on Nathaniel.
Scott groans. Ugh, it couldn't have been one of her classmates, huh? She just had to get a crush on the teenage variant of a multiversal conqueror. Cut to Nathaniel and Cassie standing together in a small clearing. Hope walks up to them and says, I'm just watching. Pretend like I'm not here. Did my dad make you come watch us? Cassie asks. I actually came to watch so that he wouldn't, Hope replies. Plus, I'm curious to see how your powers work. Well, let's get started then, Nathaniel says. He uses some of the nanotech in his suit to create a small orb about the size of a baseball. This orb by design can generate nearly any frequency, and certain frequencies correspond to emotions in the human body. He starts tapping the orb in different places. If my theory about your powers is correct, then playing this frequency should make you shrink. He presses down on the orb, and Cassie shrinks down to the size of an ant. You were right, Cassie says. Now, how do I grow back? That frequency invoked the flight part of your fight-or-flight response, Nathaniel explains. So to return to normal, you just have to steady your heart rate. How do I do that? Cassie asks. Nathaniel bends down and puts his hand on the ground. Hop onto my hand, he says. Cassie gets on, and Nathaniel puts Cassie against his heart. Listen to my heartbeat. Nathaniel scans Cassie to check on her progress. It looks like your heart rate is going faster, he says, confused. Hope laughs. Cassie, her face red, apologizes and tries to calm herself down. After a few seconds, she returns to normal size. Alright, Nathaniel says. Whenever your brain plays back that frequency, it'll activate the fear response in your brain, and you'll shrink down. Now, let's try the other way. He taps on the orb a few more times, then presses down on it, and Cassie immediately grows. This is awesome! Cassie exclaims. Scott, who is waiting with Hank and Janet outside the oasis, sees Cassie's head from above the canopy. Looks like things are going well, he notes. Back in the clearing, Nathaniel flies up to Cassie's eye level and tells her to steady her heart rate once again. Cassie does so and shrinks back to her normal height. You know, it's really hard to hear those frequencies, Cassie says. Is there a way to make them louder? Making them louder won't do anything, Nathaniel says. While our brains still register the sound, our ears can't hear frequencies this low. But what I can do is assign an audible note to both frequencies. That way, you can just think of the note and get the effect you want. Nathaniel plays the fear frequency alongside a high-pitched note from the orb that sounds like it came from a flute. Cassie immediately shrinks, then steadies her heart rate and returns to normal. Your brain should now associate that specific sound with the fear frequency. He does the same with the anger frequency, playing a long, deep note from the likes of a tuba. Cassie grows and returns to normal. You know, I'm very surprised that you mastered returning to your equilibrium so quickly, Nathaniel comments. I thought it would have taken at least a few more tries. What can I say? Cassie says nonchalantly. I'm full of surprises. Speaking of surprises, Hope says, Cassie, look at your hair! Nathaniel creates a mirror out of his suit for Cassie to look through, and she notices that all of her hair is blonde. You know, Nathaniel says, I think you look better as a blonde. I know, right? Cassie agrees. Nathaniel takes a step closer to Cassie. They stare into each other's eyes for a second before no you don't, Hope says, splitting them up. Sorry, but if you guys kissed under my watch, Scott would probably divorce me. Now, come on, let's get back to everyone else. Hope leads Nathaniel and Cassie back out to Scott, Hank, and Janet.
So how'd training go?
Hank asks. It was great, Cassie replies. I think I mastered my powers. Hank smiles.
That's amazing!
Hank hugs Cassie and looks over at Janet. Janet smiles and nods. I don't know if you've mastered your powers per se, Nathaniel says, but you've definitely learned to control them quite quickly. Not mastered my ass, Scott says. I saw you above the treetops. That was incredible! Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and 4 monstrous creatures emerge from the earth. What the hell are those things? Hope says. I thought you said this planet was uninhabited, Scott yells at Nathaniel. I said there were no sapient beings, he replies as he grabs the portal generator from Janet. There are still animals. Scott points to one of the massive creatures, which resembles an alien monster from a horror film. You call that an animal? Whatever they are, they'll kill all of us before I can input the new coordinates, Nathaniel says. I need you to keep them at bay for a bit. Scott, Hope, Hank, Janet, and Cassie get into fighting positions. One of the monsters rushes at them with super speed. Its claws nearly slice off Janet's head, but she shrinks to avoid it just in time. Another monster lunges at Cassie, and she shrinks as well, jumping up and hitting the monster with her small super strength. The monster falls back, and she returns to normal size. "Way to go, Cassie!" Scott shouts. Cassie looks at Scott and grins, and the monster she knocked back gets up again. It charges for Cassie. "Cassie, look out!" Scott yells. Cassie turns and sees the monster charging at her, but is blasted back by an energy beam. Scott looks over and sees that Nathaniel blasted the monster back with his unibeam.
What's taking so long with the coordinates?
Janet asks. "Kang's blocking off the world he's on, so I'm trying to bypass his temporal barrier, which is really hard without time travel technology." Scott grows in order to fight the monsters more easily. He grapples one to the ground, but it pushes him off. Scott kicks the monster in the face, then returns to normal size to avoid getting sliced by its claws. "I got it to work," Nathaniel exclaims. "Let's go."
Hold on, Cassie says. I want to beat these things first.
Cassie closes her eyes and grows, reaching about 150 feet tall. Scott's jaw falls open. "Whoops," Cassie says. "I may have overdone it." She steps on the monsters, crushing them, then returns to normal size. "I'm gonna have to work on that," she says sheepishly. "Cassie, are you alright?" Scott asks.
"Yeah, I'm fine," Cassie says. "I just grew a little more than I intended."
"That's crazy," Scott says. "I can't even grow to half that size without passing out." Nathaniel opens the portal and turns to Scott. "That's because the quantum energy inside Cassie's body allows her to grow and shrink more than you can. For her, the square cube law is more like the square and a quarter law." "What's the square cube law?" Scott asks. Hank explains.
The square cube law says that when an object gets bigger, its volume multiplies by the square of the number, while its mass multiplies by the cube of the number, and vice versa for when something gets smaller. It's why you get slower as you get bigger. Cassie doesn't have this problem because of the Pym particles she absorbed.
"Scott can learn about the square cube law later," Nathaniel says. "We have a big fight ahead of us." Hope, Cassie, Hank, and Janet head through the portal. Before Scott goes in, he turns to Nathaniel. "Thanks," he says, "for saving my daughter again. Maybe you're not so bad after all." Nathaniel smiles. "Thanks, Scott," he says. "Being not so bad is a good first step toward being a hero." He and Scott enter the portal together. And that's the end of Act 2. I hope it was worth the wait. Next time, we'll get to the final battle in Act 3 to see how this whole journey ends. To those of you who stuck with me so far, thank you. I hope you're excited for Part 4. And speaking of, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it when the finale drops. Hopefully, it'll come out sooner than 6 months. Guys, I am so sorry about that. I'm gonna make Part 4 come out as soon as I possibly can. But that's not until later. So, for now, see ya!